Sure, okay.
Would you all join in singing our national anthem, please?
Almighty God, of whose only gift cometh wisdom and understanding, we beseech thee by thy gracious favour to behold our universities, colleges, and schools, that knowledge may be increased amongst us, and all good learning flourish and abound. Bless all who teach and all who learn, and that grant in humility of heart they may ever look unto thee who art the fountain of all wisdom. Amen. Mr. Chancellor, Mr. Rector, this convocation is the first in which the mace of the faculty has been used in procession. The mace was given to us yesterday as a gift from the University Faculty of Engineering. I was particularly happy to accept it on behalf of the Sir George Williams Faculty of Arts because it was a gift of a sister faculty and because it was designed and made in the shops of the university. And I'd like again to express the thanks of this faculty to the Faculty of Engineering. It will remain the symbol of the authority, the rights, and the privileges of this faculty. It will be used in our convocations, on other great occasions, and will precede us in our processions. I'd be grateful if Dean Callahan would express our thanks to his faculty.
Mr. Rector, Mr. Justice Ledane, Professor Layton, each of whom does the university honor by their presence among us this afternoon, distinguished guests, members of the graduating class of Sir George Williams Faculty of Arts, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to welcome all of you here this afternoon to this convocation. The weather is good, and with the help of the Loyola tradition, it may continue good until we get through. This, as you know, is the last of 6 faculty convocations this year. Last year, we initiated the faculty convocation in the belief that we should return convocation to where it belonged, to the graduates and to their parents and friends. Last year it was successful. I hope you will believe this year that it has been equally successful. I would like at this time to express the thanks of the university to the Board of Governors, with particular emphasis to the chairman of the board, Mr. Alec Duff, and to the outside members of the board who represent the greater public community. I would express thanks also to the administration and to the members of the faculty, without whose dedication and loyalty we would not undoubtedly be having a convocation ceremony this afternoon. Thank you.
Mr. Chancellor, I have the honor to present to you the distinguished poet, Mr. Irving Layton. Mr. Layton's association with Sir George Williams began in 1950 when he was hired as a part-time instructor in the evening division. Though he had already published 2 volumes of poems by that time, few people outside of Montreal knew him as a poet. By the end of the 1950s, however, his work had attracted favorable attention from important critics in both Canada and the United States. And in 1959, his volume of collected poems, A Red Carpet for the Sun won the Governor General's Award. During the 1960s, Irving Layton became not only Canada's best known and most prolific poet, but also one of this country's most colorful and controversial public figures. Scarcely a week went by in which Layton did not appear on television or radio, in the pages of newspapers and magazines, or in person on the platforms of universities and public halls to give readings of his poems or to engage in panel discussions and debates. By 1970, Layton's poems were being taught in high schools and colleges across the country. University courses were devoted to his work, and graduate students were choosing him as a subject for their master's and doctoral dissertations. Mr. Layton has traveled widely. He has given readings of his poems in cities as far apart as Hong Kong, New York, Antwerp, and Milan, and at the request of the Canadian Department of External Affairs, has been made an extended reading tour of Australian universities. His poems have been translated into Italian, German, Russian, Romanian, Polish, South Korean, Spanish, Portuguese, French, and Greek. A volume of selected poems appeared this year in Great Britain, and another edition is to appear this fall in the United States. A wide audience has also been attracted to his most recent and most controversial volume of new poems, For My Brother Jesus. This book underlines the fact that for Mr. Layton, poetry involves a commitment to the most serious moral and political issues of our day. It is particularly appropriate to this occasion, however, that we take note of another dimension of Mr. Layton's career. Thousands of people, many of them Montrealers, know him as a gifted teacher for whom they retain the highest respect and warmest affection and gratitude. He began as a tutor in the 1930s, teaching English to immigrants. In the 1940s, he taught at the Jewish Immigrant Aid Society, the Jewish Teachers Seminary, the Ross Tutorial, the Jewish Public Library. After attaining his master's degree in political science from McGill University, he joined the staff of Herzliya High School, where he taught from 1946 to 1960. From 1963 to 1965, he taught adult education classes at the YMYWCA. For 15 years, until 1965, he taught in the evening division at Sir George, and in 1967, he was appointed as poet in residence at this institution. He later held a similar post at the University of Guelph. In 1969, he accepted a full-time position as professor of English at York University in Toronto, where he still lives and teaches. He has made time, however, in his busy schedule to commute to Montreal to teach a course at the Sadie Bronfman Center each year since 1974. Mr. Layton has earned his living as a teacher, but it is clear from the response of his students over the years that teaching is a labor of love to which he devotes many hours of his day, in or out of the classroom, with or without pay. There is no Governor General's award for good teaching. If there were, Irving Layton would be a candidate. I suggest, therefore, that we take this opportunity to pay public tribute to Irving Layton in his dual role as teacher and as poet. Mr. Chancellor, I am honored to present to you, on behalf of the Senate and by authority of the Board of Governors, Irving Layton, that you may confer on him the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
Mr. Chancellor, I have the honor to present to you the Honorable Mr. Justice Gerald Ledane, distinguished jurist, educator, lawyer, and public servant. Mr. Ledane was born and educated in Montreal. He studied in the faculties of arts and law at McGill. At graduation, he was honored as the student standing first in his class. He subsequently earned a doctorate at the University de Lyon. During the war, he served in the Royal Canadian Artillery. He is a member of the Quebec and Ontario bars and was created a Queen's Consul in 1961. He has practiced law in Montreal and has served as consul for the Attorney General of Quebec in constitutional cases from 1963 to 67. Gerald Ledane has had a varied and distinguished academic career. It began in the 1940s when for 5 years he was a part-time lecturer in the Department of English at Sir George Williams College. For nearly a decade, he was a distinguished member of the Faculty of Law of McGill. From 1967 to 72, he served as Dean of Osgoode Hall Law School of York University. Under his leadership, major innovations were made in the programs of the school, and in consequence, the reputation of an already great law school was enhanced. Dr. Ledane has a record of scholarly publication that could be the envy of most academics. His writing has ranged from topics of major constitutional significance to consideration of the methods of teaching law. He has made a number of notable contributions in the service of Canada. Dr. Ledane was a consultant to the Royal Commission on Bilingualism and Biculturalism, an advisor to the Special Counsel on the Constitution to the Minister of Justice of Canada. For 4 years, from 1969, he was chairman of the Commission of Inquiry into the Non-Medical Use of Drugs, the body that became known as the Ledane Commission. In that role, he contributed mightily to the potential for understanding and compassion between the generations in Canada. He brought reason, calm, fact, and informed judgment to an arena that had been dominated by hysteria, superstition, ignorance, and prejudice. Throughout, he displayed patience and wisdom. It was my great privilege to serve with him as a colleague, and I learned to respect his mind as one of the 2 or 3 most powerful intellects that I have met. In 1975, Gerald Ledane was appointed to the Federal Court of Appeal and to the Court-Martial Appeal Court of Canada. Mr. Chancellor, it is a distinct honor to present to you, on behalf of the Senate and by the authority of the Board of Governors, the Honorable Mr. Justice Gerald Eric Willoughby Ledane, that you may confer on him the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
It is my privilege to present to you at this time the Honorable Mr. Justice Ledane, Doctor honoris causa of this university, that he may address convocation.
Mr. Chancellor, Mr. Rector, Mr. Dean, Mr. Chairman, members of faculty, fellow graduates, ladies and gentlemen. Dean Campbell and I worked together very closely for several years. As a colleague, he was a tower of strength, wise and indefatigable. But despite our best efforts, we were unable to agree on certain important questions. After his generous testimony today, it would be most ungrateful of me if I were to say that I am still not persuaded that I deserve this honor. I am therefore happy that we are at last able to reach such a unanimous conclusion, and I very much like the way that he has drafted the final report. This is also a particularly gratifying occasion for me because of my earlier association with Sir George Williams College. Sir George permitted me to be a part-time lecturer after the war in spite of my very modest credentials. I shall always be grateful for that opportunity. Not only did it help me through law school, but it brought me into contact with the spirit of enthusiastic learning that animated Sir George in those days, and that I am sure still does. And it inspired in me a love of teaching that influenced my subsequent path. In accepting this honor with deep gratitude today, I dare to assume that it also embodies a ratification of that earlier generous decision that discerned in me, despite my lack of formal credentials, the possibility of making a modest contribution to the learning process at Sir George. I have always thought of Sir George as a leader in the field of adult education, the seat of learning in the heart of the city, reflecting the value and importance of education pursued by those who are living in the world of work. More and more mature students are pursuing higher education with a heightened perspective and commitment arising from their practical experience of life. This would appear to be the true path of the future. Our general education must be a lifelong process, and it is essentially a process of self-education. But we feel the need of the informed guidance that can be provided by the university. In what I have always thought was his best book, My Early Life, Winston Churchill put the matter in a charming way. He described how he suddenly developed a desire for learning while a young subaltern of 22 in India, and he began to encounter branches of knowledge of which he had previously been unaware. He gave as an example the subject of ethics and said, "I would have paid some scholar £2 at least to give me a lecture of an hour or an hour and a half about ethics. What was the scope of the subject? What were its main branches? What were the principal questions dealt with and the chief controversies open? Who were the high authorities and which were the standard works?" I also have pleasant recollections of Loyola of a different order and going back many more years. When I was a boy in the 30s, I used to ride my bicycle past this campus on the way out to the lakeshore in St. Anne de Belleville, which was our idea of a long trip in those days. I was always fascinated by the tranquil and dignified beauty of this campus. It was an attractive intimation to me of the beauty of higher learning. Now we have these two centers of learning, Sir George and Loyola, united in a distinguished modern university whose name reflects not only the agreement that brought them together, but that harmony to which the educated mind must aspire. What is the chief purpose of a university education? I think it is to enable us to acquire the wisdom by which we may make a beneficial contribution to life. I would like to reflect with you for a few moments upon the wisdom which we as citizens, enjoying this special advantage, can contribute to the preservation and maintenance of our democratic legal order, on which all our benefits depend. Our democratic legal order rests not only on the law that is made and applied by legislatures, government agencies, and the courts, but also on all the rules and decisions that are made in the many areas of life which serve to guide conduct and to avoid or resolve conflict. Government exists to provide regulation which we cannot provide by our other self-governing mechanisms. Courts see only the conflicts that we are unable to resolve. Life goes on in an ordered manner, very largely by virtue of restraint, compromise, and adjustment, a sense of obligation and responsibility, conventions, and a general sense of what is fitting, what a particular situation calls for in the way of civilized behavior. In other words, it goes on by the application of reason to our daily affairs. As citizens, we are all, in a certain sense, legislators, administrators, and judges. Whether or not what we do by our decisions and responses to bring freedom, order, and justice to life should be called law, strictly speaking, the legal order cannot operate effectively without it. There is a very definite relationship between private virtue and public virtue, between the manner in which we exercise our responsibility in the various areas of life and the survival and health of our democratic legal order. The American historian Carl Becker put it very well in 1945 in a series of lectures which he entitled Freedom and Responsibility in the American Way of Life, when he said, "What we need most of all is a heightened sense of individual and collective responsibility, less insistence on negative rights and the unrestrained pursuit of individual self-interest, and a more united and resolute determination to concern ourselves with the public good and to make the sacrifices that are necessary for it." This is only to say that the preservation of our freedom depends less upon the precise nature of our constitutions and laws than it does upon the character of the people. And Walter Lippmann, writing some 10 years later in The Public Philosophy, said, "The modern trouble is in a low capacity to believe in precepts which restrict and restrain private interests and desire. We must find a way to reestablish confidence in the validity of public standards. We must renew the convictions from which our political morality springs." How prescient these statements made 20 and 30 years ago appear today. Both of these public philosophers were concerned about the survival of democratic government, and both came to essentially the same conclusion, that it rests in the final analysis on the sense of responsibility of the people and an appreciation of the values, the virtue, if you will, on which our system rests. Our government is a reflection of ourselves, our values, our standards, our choices, our demands. It is not something apart. It is completely unrealistic to think that there can be a public world of essentially different values from the private world. There may be some sense of alienation with respect to government today, but like all alienation, it is because we do not recognize the work of our own hands for what it is. The individual citizen may say, well, how am I to accept responsibility for that particular judgment or that particular behavior? How is there any connection between my virtue and that behavior? An ethos is something that is made collectively. A climate of values, of attitudes, is something that is made up of individual contributions. Individual judgment and conduct vary, but they often take their color from this general climate of values. The demand for law and the application of governmental power is generated by our own actions, especially our attitudes towards responsibility. To a very great extent, the growth of governmental power reflects the substitution of collective responsibility for individual responsibility. This is true of the whole area of social welfare. Modern taxation and the redistribution of income to maintain minimum levels of welfare are such that the sense of individual responsibility has been very largely replaced by the sense of collective responsibility. Even in the non-governmental field, the application of collective power, as in labor relations, has reduced the sense of individual responsibility for conditions and outcomes. More and more we see the application of mass organization and mass consciousness. The sense of individual responsibility is transposed or transferred, yet the sense of individual responsibility is fundamental to our system. It is most fundamental in the responsible exercise of power. There is much power to make decisions affecting the welfare of individuals that must lie beyond the effective range of government control. Many of these decisions are in the realms of economic power, which government can only marginally affect. These decisions are dominated by the compelling necessity of profitable return, but they involve the manner in which human beings are treated, and they thus involve issues of justice. Justice is not the responsibility of government alone. In many areas of life, in the home, the classroom, the office, and the factory, we are called upon to dispense justice. The most troubling, the most serious question for all of us who have to make a decision which involves an exercise of power affecting the interest and welfare of another is it just? The satisfaction of the individual sense of justice is very closely and critically related to the maintenance of a democratic legal order. It is very difficult to define justice in general terms, but we all sense what it means in particular circumstances. It has a procedural aspect and a substantive aspect. It is very difficult to satisfy the individual sense of justice without an opportunity to be heard, to influence the decision. This has enormous practical implications for organizational efficiency. It is relatively easy to give a hearing in the family or the small work unit, but where very large numbers are involved, it often appears to be impractical. Yet I strongly believe that it is a necessary price to pay for the secret of our democratic society, which is the reasoned acceptance of decision. The common law does not require a hearing in the exercise of certain kinds of power, particularly where there is a broad policy discretion involved, and where it is assumed, rightly or wrongly, that the individual affected does not have a relevant contribution to make to the essential policy considerations. As citizens, we must be prepared to go beyond the requirements of the law in order to satisfy the legitimate sense of justice. I have expressed my views on other occasions with respect to the approach the law has adopted on this issue, and it must be noted that the law has been evolving towards a broader application of the right to a hearing. But it would be out of place for me on this occasion to comment on the judicial decisions in this area. On the general importance of the right to a hearing, I trust that I may be permitted to allow the professor to speak for the judge by quoting something I said in 1968 in an address entitled The Quest for Justice, the Role of the Profession at the official opening of the new building of the New Brunswick Law School. It is essential that a person affected by an administrative decision should have an opportunity to know the mind of the administrator and attempt to influence the result. To say that a decision is to be based on policy or that it is essentially discretionary is not to say that it is not governed by any criteria of relevance or that it is not susceptible of rational and critical evaluation. To meet the test of justice, every decision must meet the test of reason, whether it is based on specific concrete criteria or broad policy standards. It must find its ultimate justification and acceptance in a rational process. That process is not complete unless the person affected has had an opportunity to participate in it, to bring facts, reason, and his own views of policy to bear in an attempt to persuade the mind of the administrator. The administration may well benefit from the views of others as to what the policy should be. There is no reason why it should not justify its own views of policy. There is no basis for the view that policy or discretion are matters which the administrator may keep to himself. A person affected by a decision is entitled to know why the administrator has taken the view he has and to make the case against this view. With respect to the substantive aspect of justice, wise decision-making rests not only on a clear perception of the relevant facts, but also on a clear perception of relevant values, goals, and responsibilities. Important changes have been taking place in our order of values and in our expectations and sense of responsibility, our perceptions of what we should be trying to achieve by our political, economic, and social arrangements. New issues of policy are presented by the expanding and assertive power of technology, challenging the very assumptions of personal autonomy on which our democratic legal order rests. We are in a period calling for a re-examination and restatement of our values, goals, and responsibilities, including those as members of the world community. We have individual attempts from particular disciplinary vantage points to provide some aspect, some facet of the restatement, but what we require is a pooling of our experience, our insights, and our sense of the realizable. This is a task in which the university ought to be in the forefront. It is in this task that the various disciplines in the university, in contact with the various backgrounds and experiences of life, may find their most important and fruitful point of contact and sharing. Despite the imposing size and resources of modern democratic government, it rests on a somewhat fragile foundation of reason, accommodation, and submission to the necessity of regulation. It rests on the willing subordination of power to law. That acceptance must be based in the final analysis, not on fear, but on reason and a sense of justice. And reason and a sense of justice must go into the formation of the law if it is to command reasoned acceptance. It was Charles Evans Hughes, a great lawyer and Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, who said, "It is true that democracy cannot live without respect for law, but it must be remembered that law in a democracy will have only the respect it deserves." With the growing complexity of modern life, the development of new centers of power and power relationship, the incessant demands on government, and the momentum that democratic politics imparts to governmental growth, the increase in conflicts of all kinds, and the baffling nature of some of our major problems, it is becoming more and more difficult to govern. We should not be complacent about the foundations of our democratic legal order and the security afforded by it. The strength of our system has not been constitutional checks and balances, but an ethos, a public temper, a sense of moderation, compromise, tolerance, and restraint. There is increasing resort to power and conflict in our society. There is increasing belief in the necessity and efficacy of power. There is an emphasis on aggressivity and violence, including verbal violence, which is often the provocation of physical violence. The foundations of our democratic legal order can be severely shaken and imperiled by excessive reliance on power and aggression, by repeated defiance of law, by obstruction of rational processes of adjustment, by governmental failure brought on by excessive strains placed on the system by conflicts of all kinds. Democratic government must be made to work. It depends on certain values and attitudes, above all on a belief in orderly processes of change and a willingness to resort to them and to make them effective. Our civilization is a struggle to make reason prevail in our affairs. As citizens, we have a responsibility to uphold and improve the rational processes for the avoidance and resolution of conflict. I wish you all satisfying and rewarding careers. I hope that you will be permitted to bring your commitment, your understanding, and your skills to various areas of our institutional and community life so that you may raise the level of awareness, improve the quality of judgment and decision, and develop the processes of participation, accommodation, and settlement on which, in the final analysis, the survival and health of a democratic legal order depend.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ledane, for your convocation address.
Mr. Chancellor, on behalf of the Sir George Williams Faculty of Arts, I present to you the candidates for the degree Bachelor of Arts, for the degree Bachelor of Education, for the Diploma in Early Childhood Education, the Diploma in Instructional Technology, and the candidates for the degree Master of Arts. I certify that these candidates have fulfilled the requirements for their diplomas and degrees. Will the candidates please stand?
By the authority of the corporation and the Board of Governors of the University, I admit each of you to the appropriate diploma or degree as recommended by Senate and certified by the Dean. Will you please be seated?
Mr. Rector, I present to you the candidates for the degree Bachelor of Arts. Pilar Avelanosa. Ferris John Abraham. Sarah Adwudraham. Naomi Phyllis Akban. Joanne Lorraine Affleck. David John Anderson. Jacques Arutian. Louise Arsenault. Sorry. Honors in English with distinction. Brian James Binsley. Pauline Bizou. Patricia Barbara Block. Margaret Bolo. Dorothy Mae Jensen Bork. Louisa Maria Boschars with distinction. Murray Robertson Byrne. Elizabeth Ann Briggs. Noreen Mae Brownridge. Sophie Rose Butler. Lena Calamo, honors in French with distinction. Vincenzo Capella. Antonio Santino Carboni. Janet Rosemary Carter. Malcolm David Carter. Sorry? Loris Cavalier. Sorry? Phyllis Jane White, winner of the Robert C. Ray Prize, awarded to the graduating student with the highest standing in applied social science. The prize will be presented by Professor MacDonald, chairman of the department. Andrew Buxton, winner of the Sun Life Prize awarded to the graduating student with the highest standing in economics. The prize will be presented by Dean Armstrong. Andrew Buxton. Walter Roy Laird, winner of the Governor General's Medal, awarded to the graduating student showing the highest achievement in English language and literature. The prize will be presented by Dr. Michael Bryan, chairman of the department. Walter Laird. Theresa Marie Le Chevalier, winner of the French prize, awarded to the graduating student with the highest standing in French. The prize will be presented by Professor Jordan. Dwight Rudolph Baumel, winner of the Bogdan Zaborski Medal, awarded to the graduating student with the highest standing in geography. The prize will be presented by Professor Fraser. Leslie Jean Millen Smith, winner of the Martin Lewis Memorial Prize, awarded to the graduating student with the highest standing in history. The prize will be presented by Dr. Wall, chairman of the department. Sorry, by Professor Bode. Right across the platform. Shitsanzu Mukherjee, winner of the Science and Human Affairs Prize, awarded to the graduating student with the highest standing in Science and Human Affairs. The prize will be presented by Dr. Charlton. Warren Cohen, winner of the W.R. Fraser Medal, awarded to the graduating student with the highest standing in philosophy. The prize will be presented by Dr. Dallas Lasky, chairman of the department. Mr. Cohen. Alan Rossi, winner of the Herbert F. Quinn Medal, awarded to the graduating student with the highest standing in political science. The prize will be presented by Professor Hunter, chairman of the department. Joseph Francis Shine, winner of the J.W. Bridges Medal, awarded to the graduating student with the highest standing in psychology. The prize will be presented by Professor Chakelson. Doreen Hogg, winner of the Everett C. Hughes Medal, awarded to the graduating student with the highest standing in sociology. The prize will be presented by Professor Buckner. Judy Rebecca Shepard, winner of the Boyd Sinyard Prize, awarded to the graduating student with the highest standing in religion. The prize will be presented by Professor McDonough. Evelyn Meyer, winner of the Prize for Classics, awarded to the graduating student with the highest standing in classics. The prize will be presented by Professor Ketter. Teresa Marie Lefchevalier and Mark Irwin Olioff, winners of the Burke's Medal, awarded to the highest ranking student graduating with the degree Bachelor of Arts. Olioff, congratulations.
Subject to cloudbursts, I have the privilege to present to you your distinguished rector, Dr. John O'Brien. Dr. O'Brien.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you here on this fine day to this convocation. In fact, at this stage of convocation, it is my pleasure to extend to the graduates the best wishes of the university. You have passed through the particular program among the many offered by this faculty. You have at this stage reached the point of graduation. This is an important occasion, both for us and for you. I would like you to know as you leave the university that we extend to you our best wishes, our hope that you will continue in the future to take an interest in your university and in your faculty. We trust that we will see you again at some time in the future. Good luck to you all.
I will not unduly prolong this ceremony. It is drawing to an end. I would like to thank you all for your attendance, but more particularly for your patience with us and with the elements. We're responsible for the first, but not for the second. I would like at this time to thank the members of the pipe and drum band who played us in so gallantly. There is a reception following the termination of this activity, which will be held in Hingston Hall immediately to the east here. I would ask, subject to cloudbursts, if you would kindly retain your places until after the benediction and until after the academic procession has left these particular grounds. Thank you very much.
May the Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up his countenance upon us and give us peace, both now and evermore. Amen.